2001, Capcom released Onimusha Warlords for the Sony PlayStation 2, introducing gamers to the main character of Samanosuke of the Akechi clan, as well as his assistant, the Kunoichi Kaede. As the plot of the game takes place during the historical Battle of Okehazama, which is in the mid-1500s. The game was viewed as a fresh start for a new franchise with Capcom, as during this time of the late 1990s and early 2000s, Capcom focused heavily on the Resident Evil series of games, and gamers were quite willing to invest the time and effort into playing a new franchise published by Capcom. What's interesting is that Onimusha originally was supposed to be a medieval Japanese version of Resident Evil. That was it. Even further information had it that Onimusha was supposed to have been released on the original PlayStation, but the project was eventually moved to the PlayStation 2. Much like the Resident Evil characters, Samanosuke was based in part on a real-life actor or real-life influences. The character of Samanosuke was viewed as a strong and stable character for a new franchise, but Capcom had a few problems with the Onimusha franchise as the years passed. Onimusha 2 Samurai's Destiny didn't even feature Samanosuke in the series, as well as the game being developed by another team different than with the original game. In Europe and the United States, the game sold poorly, and the lack of familiarity with Samanosuke, being one of them not in the game, is cited as one of the reasons for poor reception with the game. As a result of the poor sales among Western audiences for Onimusha 2, Onimusha 3 Demon Siege had two very noticeable facts. The first being due to the perceived lack of interest among Western gamers. The Japanese developers at Capcom decided to bring in the Spanish-French actor Jean Reno and use his likeness in the game, as it was perceived that having a well-known Western actor would bring in more Western attention to the game when released. The second being that Samanosuke's personality changed when compared to the original Onimusha game. In the original game, Samanosuke is reserved and quiet, but he gets the job done. But in the third game, he's more confident in his abilities over the storylines of the Onimusha games, and is more assertive, arguably slightly more westernized, which would be easier for Western gamers to understand when playing the game, and trying to relate to the character's point of view in the story as it progresses. The gameplay is also different when compared to the first installment as well. Gamers did comment on the differences from the first game in comparison to the third, with the difficulty being easier when compared to the original due to more of an appeal to Western audiences. But what is ironic is that the clear appeal to Western audiences by Capcom for the third installment and lack of focus on Samanosuke, with the game being equally shared for main character Samanosuke, as well as the focus with Jean Reno's character, is the fact that the character and aspects of the game changed so much that it was too much for most Western audiences, and the game sold poorly in the Europe and the United States once again. The third installment did so poorly that the next installment, Dawn of Dreams, did not feature Samanosuke at all. In 2006, it was reported that there was interest in actually making a film based off the original Onimusha video game and focusing it on Samanosuke. News at the time mentioned that, quote, "It's samurai fighting against demons. It's very close to the simple pitch. There's also a love story woven in. It's a big adventure movie with lots of special effects." End quote. The idea of a franchise was also discussed. It was even reported that the actor Samanosuke is based off of being that of Takeshi Kaneshiro would be in the film. But critics later had mixed feelings about the Western adaptation of a possible Onimusha film, citing the possibility that the original story of the game wouldn't or couldn't be adapted faithfully. No further news of a possible film was announced, and the idea was abandoned. There were no informational sources of Onimusha from after that time, considering with the original three games combined storyline. In 2019, a remastered version of the Warlords game was released after nearly 20 years of no official word from Capcom on the Onimusha franchise, but the remastered version didn't receive good reviews from critics, with some even saying that the gaming dynamics of the game didn't age as well as many had assumed it would. It's now assumed that since so much time has passed and so much divisiveness over the games under its portrayal of Samanosuke and even Kaede, is that more than likely the Onimusha franchise would need to be rebooted. Sometimes a character can be forgotten, but only because of different portrayals for the character besides the original.